On today's Newsmakers, the hero mom, Iraqi chaos, and a Holocaust survivor's story. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each and every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable news figures. On today's Newsmakers, we're starting out with the story of a brave young mom who saved her baby's life. McKenna was shocked when she found out last December that she was pregnant, and she decided to take the abortion pill. But she quickly changed her mind, and here's the incredible part. She was able to save her baby's life. Let's welcome McKenna to Newsmakers to share the amazing story. There is a video of you sharing your experience. It's an incredible story with your baby daughter. You're holding her, speaking about how, her life is a miracle. And we'll get into the details of that. But it's a very personal story. What motivated you to speak out?
What really motivated me was finding out that actually it's illegal in Colorado to obtain the life-saving care that me and my daughter received. So finding out about that, injustice was devastating, and it made me realize that there are other women out there that are also being prevented from being offered this life-saving care. And I really thought I was being punked when I found that out. So really, that's been the motivator, is wanting to let other women know, that this other option for this life-saving care exists, and to have Colorado reverse that law.
Well, and I love the way that you introduced that, because I sort of held back on the issue because I want people to understand exactly what happened here. You found out you were pregnant, and I want you to fill in any blanks here because it's a very personal story, which you have shared. And you sought a chemical abortion, which now can be obtained through the mail. Yep. You were able to order it. It came to your home. It's a 2-pill regimen. You took the first pill and then you had second thoughts, right? Take us through what happened.
No, you hit the nail on the head. I found out that I was pregnant late December 2023, and I was in shock and devastated. I won't lie. I did not want another baby, and it was going to, in my mind at the time, ruin everything that, I've been building. For myself, financially, professionally, relationally. And I did. I ordered a chemical abortion kit online, delivered in just a couple days. And after taking that first pill, I immediately regretted that. I think if you look at it even deeper, I was never convinced that I should be taking that pill. While I was waiting for it to come in the mail, I was just kept telling myself, you're doing the right thing. You need to do this. There's no other option. Don't even think about it. Just take it, and it'll all be over with, like it never even happened. And obviously that wasn't the case. And immediately after taking that pill, it was roughly about a day later that I had reached out to Abortion Pill Reversal to see if anything could be done to reverse these effects.
McKenna, once you heard that there was an option potentially, and there are no guarantees for you to preserve your pregnancy, what happened then?
I immediately called Abortion Pill Reversal. They put me in contact with Chelsea almost immediately. It was crazy how quickly Chelsea had reached out to me. And I think that really it goes to show that just the difference, I guess, in the type of care that I was receiving. When I had ordered the abortion pill chemical abortion kit, I didn't have to speak with a doctor. I had, no human connection or interaction. Meanwhile, Chelsea is calling me after hours. It was 7 p.m., I think, somewhere around there, on a Friday, I think. And so her going out of her way, she was likely with her family. And she called me to let me know, hey, I'm in your corner. She's not making me any promises, but she's letting me know I'm going to do everything that I can to help you through this. And she went that extra mile and actually saw me in her office that next morning. That was a Saturday. So again, just the difference of care that is approached with, these two matters, it was night and day difference. And I continued to see her for that abortion pill reversal treatment over the course of my pregnancy. And because of the Abortion Pill Reversal Network, I delivered a beautiful and happy baby girl in late August. So
What would you say if there is a person out there right now who is watching this or listening to it, and they are where you were last December when you found out that you were pregnant, and they are scared and they're not sure what to do? What would you say to them right now?
I'd really look at why you're pushing yourself so hard to get this abortion. Or if you are, if you are having to tell yourself that you're making the right decision when your heart is telling you, no, I know you, I know that you're going to end up regretting this. There are other options. If you're having to justify the decision and convince yourself you're making the right one, you're not. And that will become abundantly clear later down the road when you are having to go to counseling because of that decision that you made. And really, to women that are toying, or if they have taken the first pill in the chemical abortion protocol, you have a way out. If you're within that early window, and it's worth it to at least reach out, right? It's not necessarily meaning that it's not too late, and I think that's something to really hone in on, is you have options.
McKenna, I can't emphasize enough. I know how hard it is to open up the way that you have, and you've done it so beautifully. And I know a lot of people appreciate it. So I appreciate you joining us today and telling us this incredible story.
Thank you.
Please continue to be praying for McKenna's journey and for others who find themselves in similar circumstances. We pray that the truth at the center of McKenna's story reaches women in need. We'll be right back with more Newsmakers in just a moment. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, Jeff King, president of International Christian Concern. He's joining us to warn about a shocking bill making its way through Iraq's parliament. It's a bill that he says could legalize child rape. He also breaks down the horrific persecution raging in that nation. Let's welcome Jeff to Newsmakers. Jeff, we have a lot to talk about today concerning Iraq. There is reportedly a proposed law there to lower the age of consent for young girls from 18 years old to 9 years old. What in the world is going on? What is this proposal?
Well, at a simple level, look, this is fundamentalist Islam. This comes from the Hadiths. This is common throughout the fundamentalist Islamic world. Basically, Muhammad had numerous wives. He married his favorite wife at 9 years old. So this is the Iranian-controlled Shia-backed parliament, and they are voting with their faith and saying if Muhammad did it, and this is the way they view it. They look at Muhammad like we look at Jesus. So if he did it, it's right and just and from God. So that's why they're pushing ahead of this. The rest of the world, we look at this and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But for them, it's religion.
Obviously it's implicit in the age of consent when you're talking about lowering that from 18 to 9 years old. I think we understand what that means, but let's break it down. Yep. If this law passes, what happens?
So first of all, let me give you the bold headline. This legalizes child rape, okay? A side comment, Billy, is I think you probably agree. I think there'd be a bigger outcry if this allowed the rape of 9-year-old boys. I think we'd have a bigger outcry. But this is really horrific, but not surprising. And we just have to push back on it. And there's numerous ways to do it. But it's also just kind of a legacy of the first Iraq war. We basically unfortunately, we gave the country to Iran.
If this becomes law, and before we even go there, I should mention the women in government in Iraq. There are women in government. They have been fighting back against this, but to no avail, right? They have not had any success in pushing back to stop this bill.
Yeah, and so that kind of underscores the need for Western response and for Christian response. So, apart from it's horrific and sinful, we just need to support, basic human rights and the protection of children. And we need to stand up for these women. They're Muslims for the most part, but oh my gosh, we just have to stand up for them. I don't even know what to say except that we need to be calling our representatives. We should be calling the White House and asking for UN pressure. And everyone should be calling in their country. They should be calling the Iraqi embassy or their extended office and be very vocal. So be polite, but be stern and vocal. And that's, in the end, that will give the ladies that are pushing back support. And it speaks to a broader issue, but you go ahead.
Go talk about the broader issue, because I think that is, people will hear a story like this and it's one piece of a very complicated puzzle. So go ahead and explain that.
Well, oh gosh, this is probably about as broad as you can get. But for me, the way I think about this is that, we have to think about what happened to Christianity in the Reformation. And, so think about Christianity, what it used to be up until the medieval period. So if you argued with the church, you could end up on a stake, being burned, all kinds of horrible things. And through the Reformation, we were kind of forced, so that Christianity and the power structures that were forced to open up themselves to criticism. And that's what really hasn't happened in Islam. I'm going to be talking about this in an op-ed. It's just like, this is a broad issue that just points to that thing. And the press then needs to be vocal. We need to expose, and we need to name and shame, and to push people into modernity, and again, to support the Iraqi female NGOs and parliamentarians who are pushing back on this.
Your organization, International Christian Concern, you mentioned the work that you do in Iraq. Talk a little bit more about that work and how people can come alongside you and help.
Yeah, well, we were there for years, and we were there when ISIS was attacking. We were probably, I think it was 10, 20 miles from the front lines. And basically, ISIS went into the Christian areas and they emptied them all out and destroyed the towns, destroyed the wells, everything. They wanted to end Christianity that has been in Iraq for 1,000 years, really since the very beginning, right? And so we were there, and we've done everything since. So we've really tried to rebuild the Christian areas. We rebuilt businesses, the drilling of wells. We just do all kinds of work, but the victimization keeps going on. And all that legacy of damage, is awaiting repair. And of course, what we're doing is a drop in the bucket compared to the need.
Well, people can also go to your website, persecution.org, to find out more information on the work that you do around the globe. I appreciate you coming on today, breaking this horrific story down. We're going to continue to cover it. We'll have you back as there are new developments, because there will be a second vote on this at some point there in the Iraqi parliament, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, Billy, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time. Please continue to be in prayer for Iraq and for politicians there to stop this horrific age of consent proposal and to do the right thing. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are sitting down with an author. Her name is Karen Kirsten, and she shares her mother's incredible journey of surviving the Holocaust and finding ultimate forgiveness. Forgiveness for those who killed her mother. Karen is the author of the book Irina's Gift, an epic World War II memoir of sisters, secrets, and survival. Let's welcome her here to Newsmakers. Your family's story is absolutely incredible. Your mother survived World War II. She was an infant at the time, and there's so much to unpack here, and we'll get into the book that you've just written. But tell us a little bit about her story, her early journey as a baby during those uncertain times.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Billy. I really appreciate it. She was born inside this area that was known as the Warsaw Ghetto, where over 450,000 Jewish people were walled in during World War II. And she only found this out when she was 32. She got a letter from a stranger who told her she had been born in the Warsaw Ghetto and that she was smuggled out in a backpack.
Wow.
And that the parents who raised her weren't actually her parents. And the letter also said that her mother was murdered when she was around 1 year old, and that later she was rescued by a notorious SS officer. And she kept all of that secret from me. And when I was 13 years old, I discovered that the grandparents I adored weren't actually my grandparents. So she not only survived a war, it was only when she was 32 that she really started to learn about what had really happened to her.
Wow. I mean, what an insane story. And going back to, her mother and her as a baby, obviously at 1 years old, losing her mother. How did she survive beyond there? Because I know at one point she was essentially, they were hiding in an attic, essentially. A lot of people in a situation like that, a baby, the most innocent, they would lose their lives as well. How did she end up surviving that?
It was miraculous. We'll never know why. There were other women killed who were hiding in that house, and my mother was left behind. The Nazis didn't shoot her. But she ended up, the woman who I thought was my grandmother was actually my mother's aunt. And she looked different from me. She didn't have as dark hair, and she was able to blend in with the Polish, mostly blonde haired population. And she was running around Poland trying to outfox the Nazis on false papers. And so she offered to take my mother, while my mother's father joined the underground to avenge his wife's death and to fight for his country. And eventually, they all ended up, the people I thought were my grandparents and my mother's father were arrested by the Nazis and sent to this horrible, notorious prison. And out of 500 resistance members who were tortured there, only 10 survived, and my grandfather was the only Jewish one. And meanwhile, another miracle, my mother was left behind when they were arrested. And eventually she ended up in a convent, and she was hidden by these amazing Catholic sisters. And the sister who raised my mother, Sister Cornelia, hid my mother in her bedroom. And that's where she spent the rest of the war.
Now, your mother ends up becoming a Christian at some point. Talk a little bit about that, because it's pivotal in many ways to how she dealt with forgiveness in this situation.
Absolutely. Well, the parents who raised her were atheists and Jews. So she had actually never been to a synagogue at all. And because of this feeling of not belonging and not feeling any physical love, she was invited to a friend of hers at 15 years old. She was invited to her house, this friend's house, and the family were Christian. And the mother gave my mother this all-encompassing hug. And my mother described it as this wonderful, she was a very buxom woman, and she remembers it as, she described it as this wonderful warm flesh all around me. And so this family treated my mother very differently from the atmosphere she had in her own home. She had lots of questions that her parents would shut down. They answered her questions, and they prayed around the dinner table. And so it was at one of those dinners that my mother accepted Jesus as her savior. But, for all people who've dealt with trauma, for my mother, her faith journey and her journey to forgiveness was long and complicated, because she wasn't part of a church community. And she still went on, even after she was married and raised us, she continued to feel displaced and lonely and unwanted. And it wasn't until much later that, through the Lord's Prayer, she wasn't able to forgive people. She was really angry, as is common with people who've suffered horrible traumas, and she battled with depression and anger. And she knew she had to forgive her parents, the people who'd raised her so unkindly, but she wasn't really able to. And it wasn't until through the Lord's Prayer much later that she was able to understand that she had to she found the power to forgive her parents, and she She even forgave her father for giving her away, and she even forgave the Gestapo officer who shot her mother and killed her mother.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you've put this book together, Irina's Gift, and you're here talking about this incredible story. At the end of the day, when people pick this book up, they read it, they get all the ins and the outs of what you're describing here, details we can't even get to in this interview. What are you hoping that they're thinking and feeling at the end of that?
I want people to focus on the heroes, the everyday heroes, because they're people like you and me, and we all have the power to do what they did. I wouldn't be talking to you today. I couldn't have written this book if a few people hadn't have shown kindness and empathy towards my mother instead of hate. The man who helped smuggle her out of the Warsaw Ghetto and the sisters, they didn't see her necessarily as a Jewish child. They just saw her as a sick little girl, a sad, hungry child who was crying for her mother. And that kind of empathy and kindness has the power to bring us together in the divided nation that we live in today, but it also has the power to save lives.
Absolutely. And what an incredible journey. Karen, I so appreciate you joining me to break it all down and talk with us. The book is Irina's Gift, an epic World War II memoir of sisters, secrets, and survival. Appreciate your time today.
Billy, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You can get Irina's Gift, an epic World War II memoir of sisters, secrets, and survival wherever books are sold. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel. That's where you'll find the full interviews that you saw on today's episode. Plus, you can check out our daily podcast. We have one interview every single day on that podcast. You can subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. As for this show, we are done today, and we will see you again next week.